Hello, everyone. I am Neil Abt, Editorial Director of Transport Topics. I want to welcome you to the first LiveOnWeb event for 2015. Today, I will be discussing a number of driver issues, including recruiting and training, retention and compensation, with a powerhouse panel we have put together. The chat is sponsored by EBE Technologies and Lytx. Information about these trucking industry suppliers can be found at the bottom of this page. Before we begin, I want to thank the many viewers who sent in their questions and comments in the days leading up to today's chat, in one case from as far away as New Zealand. We will be addressing many of these during the chat and are setting time aside at the end of the program to answer others. If you would like to interact with us live today, you can do so by emailing us at share@ttnews.com or commenting within this article page. Now, let me introduce the panel. We have Rip Watson, Senior TT Business Reporter, who many of you may remember from our last chat. We have Alfonso Lewis. He is a longtime driver for YRC Freight, who is also a captain of America's Road Team. He is a former grand champion of the National Truck Driving Championships, and a military veteran. Finally, we are joined by Kevin Birch, the president of Jet Express in Dayton, Ohio. Jet Express uses a mix of company drivers and owner-operators and is heavily involved in the just-in-time automotive industry. Kevin has received numerous awards for his efforts in improving the trucking industry's image. Okay, let's begin. And we're going to start with some breaking news out of Washington. FMCSA was speaking at the Transportation Research Board annual meeting this morning. Our reporter Eugene Malera was there. A short time ago, he filed a story with us, which he's going to flush out later, that's on our website. FMCSA said that they're going to award a contract later this month to get started on the hours of service research they've been ordered to do in relation to the restart provision that has been suspended at least through the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th. Kevin, I want to start with you. First of all, welcome and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Pleasure to be here, Neil. Thanks.
We've talked a number of times about hours of service. I know you have been vocal about some of the productivity problems involving the restart and some of the driver shortage issues that are related to that. I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of update on hours of service.
Sure. Well, you know, we got really our Christmas gift right at the end of the year because there was a hard-fought grassroots efforts, if you will, Neil, to get the hours of service, I don't want to say amended, but a stay, if you will, on a couple of the rules. The two issues, the 168-hour, the restart, and 2 consecutive days between 1 and 5 that you have to be off. I don't think, and Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, I don't think they realized the effect that would be. I mean, there was an after effect that all of a sudden productivity was involved in that. And, you know, we're still feeling the effects of 2007, 2008. It didn't seem right to have more drivers hauling the same amount of freight because of these rules that they really didn't anticipate. So I'm really pleased that we've got this study underway because Ann Farrell, former Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration deputy there, administrator, she made it a point that it wouldn't affect salaries. Now, Alfonso, he's you know, with YRC. The same token, he probably isn't affected by the hours of service on some of those changes, but many of us were, and it was going to create more trucks on the road to handle the same amount of freight. So I'm glad to see it.
You're in a story of ours in the current print edition, taking a look at where some of the benefits can come in involving the additional flexibility with the restart. Might not have happened over the holidays, but you sort of laid out for us, maybe you could share with the viewers an example of where some of these gains could come back through the flexibility.
Oh, absolutely, because, you know, a lot of carriers today are after dedicated freight. I mean, that's what people want to schedule, and that goes back to recruitment and retention issues. But when you have a dedicated run for a customer and you're mandated under contract to handle it, say, for 6 days, let's say the economy picks up and they want to work overtime, those particular cases under the hours of service prohibited us to use drivers that were driving safely for years and working on a Saturday, and this new rule came across and said that they could not work. So some of the older drivers, Neil, decided to, guess what, retire, sell their truck. They couldn't make any money. That was the money that they had to reinvest back into their trucks. And as from a company standpoint, it took revenue away from many of us that own trucking companies. So in saying that, in January, we're starting to see scheduled Saturdays. 4 months ago, we wouldn't have been able to work on those days, and now we are. So it's truly a win-win-win for everybody on this, and I look forward to seeing what happens out of the study.
Well, I know that hours of service will be a topic that won't be going away anytime soon. That, I'm sure there'll be plenty of coverage on our website out of TRB, and I have a feeling we'll be talking more about hours of service on LiveOnWebs throughout 2015. Let's turn to, I guess, today's main topic, which is driver shortage and retention. There are a lot of numbers out there about how big is a driver shortage, how big might it be. Not every number matches up, but what's clear is they're scary figures. Everyone agrees with that. I know one that circulates a lot projects maybe as many as 240,000 drivers by 2022 may be needed. It also comes as no surprise to us here that more emails really dealt with the shortage issue and how to tackle it as we enter 2015 than any other topic. I'm going to stick with Kevin for a minute. Many of these emails circulated were about what is something new I could do? What is the best recruiting strategy? Where is a place to better advertise than in the past? What do I need to do to entice a new driver? That was a word used multiple times, entice. There are operational changes that we as a fleet need to make. We had one from Lauren Howard of Celadon inquiring, how do we go about transforming this into a career rather than a job? That is a lot of information came out of us, many different ways to attack this. That all illustrates what a problem this really is. Turn it to you. What great solutions, what advice could you give someone that's trying to try something new in 2015?
Neil, you could do a whole half a day on this subject. I mean, what you just said is what us owners and drivers look at all the time. Some people today, I'm kind of a news junkie and listen to a lot of talk radio. There are people in our industry that think that we never had a driver shortage. So that's just a fallacy. This subject of driver shortage is all across the board. And there isn't any secret weapon or solution to it. But Neil, I will say this. Back in 07 and 08, I saw at least the driver shortage because I mentioned many times the perfect storm scenario. We are an aging workforce. I mean, every year, it's sad, but at our company, it's 56 or 57 years old. But we're like other industries, like nurses and other professions. But in saying that, we haven't done a bad job on driver entry. We've done a pathetically poor job. We just don't want to get people into this industry, and as leaders, and we've got to communicate, and that's why I said in my last, couple of years that I'm going to be involved in the industry, give back a little bit. We need to get the interest back in and tell people what we do, why we do it, and how important it is. So let's go back to the perfect storm. Aging workforce, just terrible driver entry programs, and then we get the economy picking up. As you well know, Neil, we lose a lot of drivers to construction, so construction's picking up. And then you dabble in this thing called the CSA and some other government regulations, and you sprinkle that in, and then you stir it all up. You've got a storm, and the end result is, after all these years, we've got a driver shortage. And, this didn't happen overnight, but I'm here to tell you we're right in the middle of it. And it's here, and we're all trying to deal with it. And that's why freight rates are up. Shippers are saying, guess what? I better take care of my carrier because there's not as many people I can use. And they're seeing the rates go up. So, that story, we could talk till the cows come home. But it faces every one of the drivers, everybody involved in this industry, that there is a driver shortage, but it's who you talk to as to how severe it is. But to many of us, it's real time.
Let me turn to Alfonso. Many emails that came in were somewhat directed at you in your position as a public figure driver, as America's road team captain, something we're going to talk a little bit more about as we go on today. But they thought maybe you had some advice to share in terms of your interaction with this younger generation to replace, as Kevin said, some of the older generation that may be retiring. As you interact, encourage people to get involved, or if they're asking you questions, what if fleets want to know if there's something they might be missing in terms of how they can go about getting noticed by this younger generation.
Yeah.
And also welcome. I want to thank you also
Thank
for
you.
participating.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin, and I think this has been a storm that's been a long time coming, and I think we may have been just a little slow to react, to it. As far as getting young drivers, it's got to be attractive. You got to attract these young guys, young ladies into the industry. It's like we, as young people, you see your parents are always encouraging their kids to become doctors, become lawyers, or whatever. Why are we not encouraging these people to become professional drivers? This is a great career, that provides a great, what's the word I'm looking for? A great opportunity for your home life. To raise your kids and send your kids to college. I think one of the most important parts of it, especially to get these young people in, new drivers, and to retain drivers, is going to be family time, home time. And we spoke about it yesterday to a couple of drivers, and I was asking them, and it's not just home time, it's quality home time, with your family. You think about it, you got young people, got kids who are 12, 13 years old, playing soccer, playing football, baseball. As a father coming up myself, one thing I wanted to do, even though I love driving, but one thing I wanted to do was to be able to, during the week, be able to see my son play, come home and be with my wife, to share those times, because they are raising families. So I think the industry has to focus on and understand that these are family-oriented people.
So it might not be just, hey, I got you home X hours or X days. Maybe it's a working together of, can we somehow coordinate, whether it's a game, a recital, a event, a family birthday party, whatever it is, to be a little bit more involved in the interaction of someone's life in terms of the responsibilities.
I can give you a perfect example. I was young in the industry, maybe 15 years, and my son playing ball. And my dispatcher will allow me the opportunity to come in a little early. I'm a local driver, so I'm fortunate in that area. But I would come in a little earlier, get off early enough, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever, that time of day, to go see my son play ball. Mm-hmm. So, I thought that was a dedication from them to me to relax that schedule while I was able to do that. So, that makes me take pride in the company itself. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I want to stay there.
Kevin, I want to come back to you. A number of questions surrounded understanding owner-operators and company drivers, whether it be a transition from one to the other, whether it be how to manage, recruit, target one group versus target both groups and balance both groups. Mm-hmm. I know that is something that you deal with Jet Express, with a lot of interest out there surrounding that particular issue. Maybe you can speak a little bit how you go about balancing that.
Thank you, Neil. I'd be more than happy to. It's interesting. I think in today's world, you have to give a lot of options to drivers. And what we try to do, and I know there's a lot of other carriers out there doing the same thing, we've kept a model that works, and it's an owner-operator, 70%, 30% company. So I can truly speak out of both sides of my mouth in the fact that one's got a different pay schedule, benefit program, maybe trucks and whatnot, and then you've got your owner-operators. But, I've often said at 70%, that is the backbone of our company. And really in trucking, especially like in truckload, the owner-operator for years and still today is considered the backbone. And in saying that, every month you see more and more that are either selling their trucks to some foreign country or getting out of the business. And I guess what I'm circling back on, we had a situation where we had a company driver, and they do switch back and forth. They got to give us plenty of time to go back, notification. But he really wasn't a bad driver, but he wasn't an outstanding driver. So let's rate him as a 7 or an 8 as a company driver. And he came to management and said, I'm going to buy a truck. So, those are opportunities, because when somebody wants to leave our company, I wish them well, and I hope that, and many times they do come back. But you always have to promote your drivers and wherever they want to go. They may be into another, maybe into the shop or maybe another job opportunity. But let's go back to the story where a driver was a 7. And he went to the bank and he bought a truck, and everybody thought he probably wouldn't make it. I'm here to tell you that driver turned out to be one of our best owner-operators. He didn't want to work Saturday as a company person, but he sure wanted to move the freight with his truck on a Saturday. He didn't want to crank the dollies down, Alfonso, you know, he didn't want to back it in the dock so much, but when he was an owner-operator, he took pride in what he did, and so, you know, you have to you can't tell drivers what's in their head. You got to let them tell you, and the management's got to listen to drivers.
That's a great
You
point.
agree on that?
I completely agree with that. You know, and talking to you guys, we were trying to figure out what was the priority. You know, was it home time, was it pay, and was it respect? Well, home time came first. Pay and respect was right there tied. You know, you respect the driver. Right. I mean, and it's an individual thing. When you respect the driver, you know, that makes that driver want to do more for you. He wants to work harder. You know, he's going to go the extra mile.
You know, it's all about communications. Years ago, we had, my office is pretty close to dispatch, Neil, and there was a driver, a fairly new driver. He was 6'4", 6'5", and he wasn't complaining. He was telling our dispatch, hey, listen, that tractor you gave me going up to Detroit, I was a little bit cramped in there. Matter of fact, I had a hard time, you know, kind of getting in and getting out, let alone staying in there all hunched over and whatnot. And the dispatcher said, hey, listen, you don't make the payments on that. It's not your truck. Just if you don't want it, then, you know, you maybe need to go somewhere else. Well, I overheard that, went over there, and I told the dispatcher, that chair you're sitting in, maybe if that doesn't fit your body or whatnot, and you're in it because we're 24/7, you want me to tell you that chair that you've got to sit at answering the phones for the next 8-9 hours, that if you don't like that chair, I guess you better go home? Take it or leave it. So that's that communication, Alfonso. We talked about that earlier.
Exactly.
That, you know, a lot of it isn't. Still, people say they communicate, but do they? Do they really ask what's going on?
It's changed over the years. I tell you that. I can
it has improved.
Oh, it has improved. I can think back 20 years ago. It was almost like exactly like you're saying. If it didn't fit the driver and the driver wasn't happy with it, well, I got another driver waiting to get in your seat. You know, but nowadays it's more of even if you call me by my name or just tell me good morning, you know, thanks for the job you've done or something occasionally during the week, you know, that makes the driver feel better. He wants, as I said before, wants to work harder, wants to go the extra mile for you. So that respect just really goes a long way in making it personal with that driver.
You know, you said earlier about family. Family is important to so many of us, and if a driver, during orientation, and this might be a suggestion for carriers out there, during orientation, a lot of times drivers say, well, I never get the time off, or they won't let me have it. You know, if a driver comes to the dispatch and says, next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, my son or daughter is playing in the game, you know what, we're going to make it happen. But if you tell us on Monday at 4 o'clock that I need off tomorrow, you may not get that request fulfilled. So, I mean, that's got to be communicated from the get-go. And when drivers know that they can do that, it's not an absolute no, you can't have because you're busy, you know, the trucking is busy right now. But they know that there's a possibility if they give them notice, it works. That's all about communication.
So they know you tried.
Yeah. Would this be an example of a couple of questions surrounded building loyalty among drivers beyond pay? What are the ways to build loyalty? It was one that was asked a few times. I guess you're laying out examples of what fleets might be able to do in terms of this interaction and communication that might go to that and maybe help them with some of the turnover and retention.
Right.
You're watching LiveOnWeb. We're talking the driver shortage today. Just want to remind everyone that they can interact with us. They can comment on this article page. They can also send emails to share@ttnews.com. We just want to get into a few other things that were asked about, commented about, and talking about shortage and retention. And just right after that, we're going to bring Rip in to talk a little bit about driver pay as well. One train of thought that some people had was about training, driver training, the need to find some more funding with training to improve the training process. They felt that might be the best way to tackle the shortage problem. We had some truck driver trainers saying we do have some connection with some fleets connecting applicants with jobs once they graduate the program, but they feel a little out of the loop, and how could they improve that? Also heard from some maybe smaller fleets that felt they might be at a disadvantage without their own training schools. I'm wondering if you have any advice, gentlemen, about the training process, funding, any suggestions about how to get the applicants through and maybe out on the road. I also know that there's some push to get some younger drivers below 21, and at least some sort of graduated program maybe you want to address as well.
I don't know how do you get the young drivers to stay involved? We were talking about that earlier, between the ages of 19 and 20. You know, it's trying to figure out how to keep them motivated and want to come into the industry. And I think a marketing thing is maybe a big part of it. I mean, we got to advertise. These young people on Facebook, Twitter. If you advertise to these young people, I believe you can keep them, keep it on their mind. And when the time comes, when I remember being young, 18, 19 years old, and I wanted to be a driver. And fortunately, I went into the military and I learned. And when I came out, it was still in me. At 21 years old, when these guys are prepared to go over the road, to get their CDLs, it's still in them. So it's just a point of getting them back into that truck, getting them into the truck.
The use of technology, everyone you're dealing with out there, you mentioned Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, you could go on and on and on in terms of social media beyond just use of the internet. While maybe there's one train of thought that some technology, especially in-cab technologies, may be pushing a couple older drivers out maybe before their time. In terms of some of the recruiting to address a shortage, that more technology, especially on a social media aspect, needs to be completely embraced.
Oh yeah, the young people adapt to that very easily because they grew up with it, so they're going to adapt very easily to it. And I even talking to the older drivers that I've dealt with, and I didn't come up with computers, early on, but they're so easy to get involved with, and just a little training kind of helps you. Flow right into it, and these guys really embrace it. Majority of people I've talked to.
Kevin, you're heavily involved in the image campaign, Trucking Moves America Forward, and Alfonso was here at ATA's headquarters last month during Hiring Our Heroes announcement to target military veterans to enter the industry and make the transition from military life to civilian truck driving easier. Some people have reached out, Kevin, beyond these programs I just mentioned, to say, do we need to target other specific groups specifically? They referenced women, they referenced Latinos, also to maybe older married couples starting a second career, that as opposed to breaking down, kind of drilling down a little deeper from where this image campaign is starting, to really focus on some targeted groups and go after them.
It's a broad spectrum. If you take, I feel like taking a paintbrush and just painting. There's so many things that we can look at to get drivers involved, males and females, and older couples and singles, and the younger drivers, if you will. There's so many opportunities that Trucking Moves America Forward, is not quite a year old, and we've got a story to tell, not just the congressmen and the local officials, but there's job opportunities, and it just like the statistics, 1 out of 16 Americans are involved in this thing called trucking. Whether it's at the fuel stops or the OEMs or the trailer manufacturers, the truck drivers, the dispatchers, we've got a story that we've just barely scratched. So now, case in point, I've got a neighbor that's got a son that's got $60,000 worth of school loans, and he wants to zero in on one subject. I told him a couple of years ago he should have bought a truck. Then by now he would have had 2 trucks on, and he'd be one of the, an entrepreneur. But, one thing that I've never really figured out yet, I'm a Wolverine in a Buckeye state of Dayton, Ohio, and I did some research, and there's 1,100 drivers with CDLs, 1,100 drivers that are 19, 20 years old, 18, 19, and 20. That's intra. So let's track those. Let's see what's going on with their record, and there's 35 states within our United States that has the intra rule. So what are those 1,100 people that are going up and down interstates such as I-75? I can drive, have a driver, and we did, Neil, from Dayton, Ohio to Toledo. It's 165 miles, interstate. He does his work up there, unloads, reloads, comes back. But yet I can't send him to Richmond, Indiana. I can't go down into Kentucky or Cincinnati. We've got to look at that. I know ATA is looking at the younger driver issue, but we need in this industry qualified CDL, because we don't want just anybody saying, well, I've got to do this. But they've got to be qualified because they represent the industry. And, you know, the road team is a good example. They are our talking pieces out there. And we've got to do a better job on that, because we don't want young people going to the West Coast that have got just a few weeks of experience. Finishing schools, whatever you want to call them, those are great things. But for years, the government paid for people to get a license, if you will, and they never had any intention of being a truck driver. And they went through a school that was maybe 3 or 4 weeks. You know, I wouldn't want somebody with just that little experience behind the wheel. That's not what it's about. It's about a plan, procedure, structured daylight hours, mentorship. At the end of the day, you realize, you know, give me a scorecard at the end of the day about my backing or about my pre-trip. Tell me about that stuff. That's what they need, not just hurry up and go through a school. Okay. We're losing a lot more drivers every day through retirement, and they're not in the schools. I mean, that's that imbalance. You don't want that.
Number of things going to have to, number of factors need to come together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit more to turnover and pay. I had asked Bob Costello, economist at the ATA, who tracks turnover. He's working on the latest report, which will cover the third quarter. In October, he put out the report for the second quarter. It showed turnover for both large and small truckload fleets over 90%. LTL turnover, which is the space that Alfonso operates in, that was only at 11%, and maybe we can briefly get into why there is such a disparity. The new report will be out soon, but Bob said there's really no reason to think from anything we've seen that on the truckload turnover side, these numbers are going to get any better anytime soon. Sometimes the answer is believed to be pay, 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 pay. I guess one question is where do rates need to be? Along with that, Chris Polenz of Warner, Vice President of Recruiting there, asks us a question about sign-on bonuses. Do we expect them to grow? Do we expect them to change into other types of pay? We also have heard from some people that are trying hiring bonuses. They don't feel that the hiring bonus is working. Once it's paid off, it's not solving the longer-term problem. So this is complex. Let me bring Rip in first here. Thank you for being patient for a few minutes through this interesting conversation. You cover track pay and some demographics and a number of different issues in relation to the business side of trucking and the drivers. Maybe you could bring our viewers up to speed as to what some of your reporting has shown and how it addresses the shortage issue as a whole.
Let's start with the basics here. I think we need to thank Alfonso and Kevin both for making it really clear to the viewers that what we're talking about here is not just money. We're talking about a package and the way that drivers are being treated. And one way I think you can look at this is to look at the larger carriers, Werner being one of them, often have hundreds of different pay packages. I think what they're trying to do here is they're really looking at every single option to try to find something that will suit a particular driver. I think if you look at the overall picture, though, this is going to continue to be an incredibly difficult task. There may be some drivers who just want to run every single mile that they possibly can, and there are going to be others who are going to want to be home. And you know, laying over on top of that is the fact that with a shortage of drivers, we've got companies that have chosen to make some very substantial pay increases for their drivers. Most recently, companies like Crete Carrier. We've been talking previously with companies like U.S. Express. These are double-digit pay increases. Now, you have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, why are people doing this? And what do they hope to gain from it? If you were to go to the average American and say, oh, here's a 15% pay increase, some of them would probably faint. Or they would go out, but on the other hand, there'd be some of them that would go out and be buying a new car. So the point here is, at least as I see it, is that we've got a situation out there where people are literally trying everything, including sign-on bonuses, hiring bonuses. And I don't see how we're going to change that. If you offer someone more pay, what is the consequence of that? They're going to be very happy, but chances are there's a competitor across the street who may be doing the same thing. There may be someone in another mode of trucking, another piece of trucking, who is going to be feeling the consequences as somebody takes a pay increase. For example, if you look at the van drivers, for example, maybe they'll decide that with a pay increase that they'll want to stay as van drivers and they won't try to want them to move to LTL. You know, we've really got an incredibly long and complicated story here. I did want to mention one other thing about the driver pay issue. An important thing that came out late last year through the National Transportation Institute is the fact that 42% of the fleets in the third quarter announced that they were raising pay or compensation in some fashion. Now, you consider that the previous high percentage was 11. That tells you the number of and the broad depths of the efforts here. Personally, I just think that changing from a signing bonus to paying somebody a little bit more per mile or that kind of thing is something that's going to continue to be a trial and error, because the trucking industry is so complex and you just can't figure that one solution is going to fix everyone's problems.
Thank you, Rip. Some questions are coming in. I want to assure everyone we're going to do our best to get to them a little bit later. Some deal with the pay issue, some on a number of different interesting issues, and thank you for sending them in. I encourage you to continue. If we don't get to all of them during the program today, we may hang around after we sign off to address a few more of them and do a LiveOnWeb extra. We'll see how the rest of our time goes today. I want to turn back to Kevin and Alfonso in relation to some of the pay, some of the issues. Also want to input some of the questions. How do we compete with private fleets? Some have asked that just tend to pay more. I know that we have a slide from ATA's compensation survey, I believe, in our system. Might be putting up that they receive more base pay, and it's just hard to compete. A couple other of the comments came with a general feeling of, do we need to change the way it's discussed, whether it's about total compensation? How do we create a better sense of financial security in terms of how pay is generally discussed? So I'd open up to either of you, and also one other thing I should mention, there were a lot of inquiries about different pay packages. So with that said, I know there are some differences in how between the LTL and Jet Express. So just would see if you have any feedback, advice in terms of this pay issue, which clearly is part of this equation.
Well, the pay increase in pays and the hiring bonuses, just my personal opinion, it only opens the door. It kind of opens the door. If you don't have the stability, as we talked earlier, respecting the drivers, you don't give them the family time. You open that door, and then it's almost for a driver like you open it, let me walk in, and then you close it. In a sense, because you left me there, you didn't give me anything else. I just think quality time with family. It's got to be family oriented. That's just a big thing for me. It's got to be family oriented. Even when you talk to drivers, pay, it was not the number one thing. The ones I've talked to, pay was not the number one thing on their list. It was all about family time, quality time with their families. They understand they have to work. I mean, we all do, but family time was real important.
Would you agree with that, Kevin?
I do, and I think the market basically, Chairman Long at the ATA said it several times, that whatever the market bears. I think that's unfortunately that's the way business operates nowadays. I think everybody wants a raise. Everybody, whatever job that you're at, Neil, I don't know when you got your last raise, but I'm sure you'd take a pay increase. We all do. And there might be times, but, you know, let's not forget, it wasn't that many years ago that trucking was pretty tough. I mean, bankruptcies were up. There was a lot of care. I mean, let's not forget, banks didn't want to give out any money. Matter of fact, line of credit, when I was with TCA, I had people call me saying, you know, I never hit my line of credit, but the bank's taking it away. Trucking was not really an industry where you could get money. So I think there's still some of those feelings there that people are being very cautious. But in saying that, shippers now are seeing the tightening, and now we are seeing increases. And as those increases happen, carriers across the country are giving both union, non-union, truckload, LTL, they're all getting some of those increases, and those are being passed along. You know, when you think about it, we didn't know where fuel was. You know, fuel surcharge was a big issue because you couldn't stay on top of it. Fuel was going up so high you couldn't get the money. I mean, it was a tough situation. Now it's gone the opposite way. But in saying that, this driver shortage indirectly has spurred rate increases. And, you know, there for a while, rates were going down, not going up. And it's pretty tough when our, you know, cost of trailers, equipment, trucks, even used trucks were going up. It's tough to give everybody and absorb those, and guess what? Stay in business. So it's a balance that it's tough for us owners to, but once we get those raises, they're passed along.
And we are seeing some increase in the different types of pay, whether it be different pay packages, whether it be how a driver is compensated. We are seeing a bit more of a widening variety of different methods.
Yeah, and I think, too, that I think companies are getting smarter, Neil, on how they pay. You know, the compensation has never been number one. Let's say it's been in the top 5, be realistic, in the last 10, 12 years. But in saying that, I think companies are getting smarter that, okay, so here's the one that takes a lot of time, and they know that it takes a lot of time. They don't travel that many miles. Here's the pay package. A smart company will zero in. We never want to send a driver east if he doesn't know, if he gets nervous around New York or the tollways and whatnot. Why do that? We don't send somebody to the mountains that have never had any experience. In the same token, we try to put a driver in a lane that works for his family time, the days he might want Thursdays off because of whatever, Boy Scouts or whatever. There are certain customers that don't ship on Thursday, so guess what we do? I know seniority is important, but what we try to do is put the right driver in the right lane, because then that just creates that win-win. So it's not the pay so much. That pay might be worth $20, $30 to him. I'm not sure. But we work with the shippers a lot of times to put the right person in.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to mention there were quite a few questions asking some specifics involving pay or shortage in certain areas, different types of pay packages. I want to suggest Bob Costello, senior economist for ATA, who was actually the first LiveOnWeb guest that we had, our first program last summer. He provided some assistance, some information. He conducted a pay compensation study. I would recommend as one option for people looking to obtain some of this information as they battle the shortage and retention problem. More information is available at atabusinesssolutions.com. Want to turn to maybe some lifestyle issues now. I'm going to start with Kevin. Besides being the vice chairman of American Trucking Associations, a past chairman of the Truckload Carriers Association, Kevin maybe can share some unique experiences. He went sort of undercover a number of years ago to get his own CDL to go through the process. This is a story he shared with TT a number of years ago. We've looked for a forum just to provide him an opportunity to share that experience, and I think we found it today. So if you could briefly share with us what that experience was like.
Well, thanks, Neil. And some of my friends that might be watching or listening in, they've heard this story. But, you know, in 2009, when I was going in as chairman of Truckload Carriers, I felt that for the last 40-some years that I was involved in the trucking industry, there's one thing I never got was actually the CDL. So to make a long story short, before the show came out that was Undercover Boss, I didn't want to go into a school. I was in Springfield, right outside of Dayton. I didn't want to go to the school and have somebody just arbitrarily go down the list and give me a check off that he did these deals at the school, and I didn't want any preferential treatment. But in saying that, so it lasted about 3 weeks where I was able to stay undercover and watch my friendly competitors, large and small, send their recruiters in. And I was recruited by a large carrier. while I was in there. So it was kind of a neat story. And I tell you what, from it, a lot has happened since then. And I've always appreciated all drivers and anybody in this industry. But now when I shake a hand of a 1-year veteran truck driver at our company or a 20-year, it has a different feeling when I shake their hand now, because now I know what they did to get that. Whereas before, you can say that you appreciate what they do, but do you really? So from that, to finish the story, the test, I finally went through, and I passed the written test and the pre-trip, and I was on the road test, and the state administrator was sitting next to me with a pad, and I was nervous, I was sweating, and it was a 19-mile trip. 17 miles into it, I'm on a ramp, and I can't find a gear. I'm out of gear, and I couldn't find it, and I remember my instructor saying, Kevin, no matter what, never be out of gear. And I couldn't find it. I'm grinding, and it's embarrassing. And the instructor said, well, son, you need to take this back in, because out of gear is out of control, is automatic dismissal. You're done. And I was just going out to San Diego for an event and telling people about the fact that I was going to get my license. And he said, but Kevin, even if you would have found that gear, you took your hands off the steering wheel 16 times. Pointing to things out there, the cornfield and everything else. And I still have that report. So, and that's why drivers say, Kevin, when I see him on the road, don't wave at me. I'm not, now I understand, you're 2 hands on the wheel. But true story, I went back and practiced and got my CDL. And I have about 920 miles of safe driving. And I told that to the road team guys last night, and they're probably still laughing about it.
Well, can I jump in here for just a second and say, first off, it's great that Kevin did what he did. It seems to me that everybody who is out there in the shipper audience maybe should experience, get yourselves inside a truck. Sit in the sleeper. Just ride down the road for a little bit and just don't sit there behind your desk and try to figure out how to cut your rates by a quarter of a mil or something per mile. Get out, get in the truck, and see what these guys do, and see just how much Kevin has accomplished, and also, much more importantly, how much Alfonso has accomplished.
It makes a difference knowing that Kevin's done it, or any CEO, YRC Freight, YRC Worldwide. I remember James Welch, he came and told us, I used to work on the dock, I know all about it. It makes that driver respect you more, knowing that you know what I go through on a daily basis.
Right. I got new appreciation, Alfonso, for pre-trip, because that can, just like anything else. The pre-trip inspection is so key. It's the start of your day. It's just like, at your desk when you've got certain things organized, what you want to do, your Franklin planner, your whatever you got going on. That's important, and I've got, like I said, new appreciation. And that's why I said, when you get back, Rip, about the pay, our drivers, there's not a driver that's hauling America's freight today that does not deserve more money. And I think with the fact of these situations coming on now with the driver shortage and the tightening, getting back to this, you're definitely seeing that's going to happen. You saw it in 2014 in the beginning. You're going to see it more in 2015. And that will lead to more people interested in this industry.
No, it will, I'm sure. We've actually heard it, at various conferences. We've heard people say drivers should be paid 50% more on average. I personally think that, this, as Kevin has pointed out, we've got an industry that has been struggling to get back on its financial feet, and it's not going to get back on its financial feet if all the money goes to the drivers. It's just a matter of we've got to have some balance.
Right, and shipper awareness is so important, and I think we're getting smarter on that. We're getting smarter on selling our businesses as far as the freight lanes, going in with a customer and letting them know. Driver appreciation, we already appreciate the drivers. We need to educate the shippers to appreciate them.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. Trucking Moves America Forward is going to show that.
Exactly. It goes to the shippers and companies that are getting the freight and who are shipping the freight.
Yeah.
We received some questions both beforehand and some that have come in that have referenced the shipper role that they could play. Some asking what can we better do, and some of the communication, whether it be detention, avoiding detention time, any number of things that you guys laid out.
That was the biggest thing.
The role here.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I've heard is about detention, holding the driver up. You know, LTL, we don't get it very much, but we hear a lot of over-the-road drivers. They come in there, appointment 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they're not through to 12, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, you've wasted, a good portion of that driver's day, waiting to be unloaded or be loaded.
So before we I want to come back to lifestyle. We're going to get to the question shortly. But while we have you here, Alfonso, I want to share with the audience why you're in our offices. You are a member of America's Road Team.
Yes, I am.
You are completing your second year, I guess, as an active captain. I guess you say once America's Road Team captain, always, right?
I'm actually from 2011 and 2012.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's no problem.
There, and still here. So
I'm
you're
a
here.
Senior.
You're helping the new team that will be selected either tonight or tomorrow.
Tonight.
The new 2-year will be formally announced tomorrow. There will be information on our website, dtnews.com, about the announcement. Or if you could just give us a little bit of your experiences as a road team captain, what that is like, maybe even how it compares to being a truck driver.
Well, as a road team captain, it's a great opportunity just to get out and talk to the general public, about trucking. It's an image and outreach program. Getting a positive image out about trucking, and it's great to have it coming from a driver. And being an America's Road Team captain is like we always say it's a highlight of our lives. It's a proud moment. It's a proud opportunity. You're representing millions of drivers out on our nation's highways. We sometimes hear the negative things, but we're here to bring out that positive message, about trucking. These last couple of days, we got the new candidates that are coming in. Like I said, I was in 2011. I can remember like it was yesterday of going through the same process. I know the nerves that they're going through.
What words of wisdom might you have given some of them as they go through some of the interviews, some of the process? Some will make it, some will not. Maybe it'll be next time for some. All of them are clearly the upper echelon of drivers. What words of advice have you given them?
These are all top drivers. They're all top drivers. First thing you always tell them just to be themselves. They enjoy what they do. They love being drivers. They want to get to talk to the public about trucking and promoting this industry. So you got to let them bring that out when they're doing their interviews or when they're doing their media or when they're doing their speeches. And you can see these guys over these last 2 days. You can see these guys really start to come out. And I know from what I've heard, the competition is very tight, and because you got a lot of great drivers there.
So and America's Road Team, just one of your accomplishments. I referenced earlier, you were the grand champion of the National Truck Driving Championships. You rang the opening bell of the stock exchange, I believe, right?
Yes.
You were in the inaugural YRC Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. You were one, I believe, of the first 2 inducted, right? You've been under the YRC umbrella 27 years.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's correct.
So how do some of these, what was some of the biggest accomplishments, most exciting out of some? We could probably spend the whole LiveOnWeb just talking about all the experiences you've gone through in your career, and I think it would be very appropriate to call it a career in driving, even apart from the prior military service. What are some of the accomplishments besides just going about your route every day that you've experienced during your career in trucking?
Oh wow! I've competed at state level several times. I won it 3 times in a row. I think 04, 05, 06, and 07. 07 obviously was a great year. Getting to the nationals, being named, just being named the champion of the 4-axle category that morning, I was happy. I was good to go, and that later that night when I was named as grand champion, it was like, I remember it like it was yesterday, but I was just so overwhelmed. I couldn't even tell you how I felt. And thinking about it now, even brings chills to me. But it was a great opportunity. It's measuring them as far as America's Road Team captain and winning the nationals. They're on the same plane. I can't put one above the other.
Kevin, you've had some interaction this week with a few of the drivers. I know you're going to be spending a few minutes with them later downtown. Maybe
Right.
you want to mention it or not. But what has your experience been this week?
Well, you know, I want to paint a picture of what I did yesterday, and there was 31 applicants, if you will, or finalists, and they're going to get it down to, I guess, 18 or 19. But Neil, picture this: American Idol. It's the same thing. It happened about 15 minutes from here. You've got 31 drivers that are out there just talking about what am I going to say, how am I going to do it. These are drivers, I mean, when I looked at some of the profiles, I mean, 500,000, million two, accident free, and all the things that they do, and all the things that Alfonso just talked about. But picture, let's go back to American Idol. You go in the door, and it's almost like Shark on that you see on CNBC now, where the door is open and you walk in, and here's 5 judges. Shark Tank. All right, and then there's a chair, one lonely chair. And I was fortunate to ask a couple questions, but I'm sitting here thinking, boy, the drivers drive the companies, and here's a driver coming in, sitting in a chair, not knowing what the questions are going to be. And they've got mentors that Alfonso had a couple, 3, didn't you, that you were mentoring to prep them, and then drill them with questions. I mean, it was American Idol where you start singing or playing the guitar or tap dancing. This is talking truck by a professional. It was great. And this one, Phil Bird, last year's chairman of ATA, you know, he stands behind the drivers 100%. I know now what Phil was saying about you get in that road team or you get in there about seeing that. That's what it's all about. And that is what it's all about. We're really proud of you and the road team for sure.
Well, trust me, I enjoy it. I really do.
We'll have information tomorrow about the selection of the new team, and they'll be going down to the Volvo plant in Virginia to get, I guess, some training and get started with the new crop to get the message out there. Before I turn to questions, do you have something to add, Rip?
I just wanted to add that it's fantastic what Alfonso has done. It's fantastic what Kevin has done in his company. I'd just like to throw this out and say 1 out of 16 of Americans is in the trucking industry. It is an industry that's so vital to this country. It is an industry that has a long and proud heritage and a very safe heritage. Maybe those of us who have been sitting around talking to each other need to follow the lead of folks like Alfonso and folks like Kevin and get out and talk to your neighbors, talk to your schools, and tell people what the trucking industry is doing and how it really is a people industry at the bottom line.
You know, that's a great, Rip, that's a great point. I mean, that's a good way to kind of narrow, you know, towards the end of the program, because Trucking Moves America Forward is trying to do that. It's not ATA based, it's not the certain organization, it's for all truckers. But we have to tell our story. You know, I love wearing I Love My Trucks button. There's a reason why, because it's a conversation starter. And numerous times when I'm on an airplane, the stewardess will, you know, she'll chuckle and say, well, if you like trucks, how come you're on this plane? Well, believe it or not, Boeing, I think, had many of the parts brought in on a truck. And the beverages that she's putting in or taking out and getting ready. And that's what I tell them. It's knowledge, and that's what we need to do. You hit that spot on, because we're just scratching the surface here. And if we want to get drivers in this industry where we can promote, I think Neil said earlier, one of the callers wanted to, you know, what's in it for a future. There's a lot of opportunities there. You can stay being a long-haul, short-haul driver. You can do a lot of different things. You can be a safety director. You can probably own the company if you wanted to. Those are opportunities, and we don't talk about. So many times, and you just mentioned it, we don't say what we do. We just take our paycheck and say, well, we're a trucker. We're more than a trucker. We move America.
Well said. Want to get to a couple questions. We are starting to run short on time. I know our guests have some busy schedules, both in terms of road team. Kevin has some events downtown. I know tomorrow he's off, I believe, probably tonight to speak in Detroit tomorrow. Is that correct?
Leaving early tomorrow morning for the Detroit Auto Show.
So we better get to a couple of these. I'm going to, at some point, look also on the computer, some that have come in, and be on the lookout. We may stick around and do a little extra. A couple that have come in. One, Andrew Dondelinger, a VP of Emerging Technologies at Navistar, just inquiring about what mobile apps do drivers like to use the most. Also, there was some question just Kevin, some that you might use. I know we've seen some smartphones around. Also, just a general question about fleets allowing or restricting use of certain apps that drivers want to use in the vehicle, tying it in relation to some retention and recruiting. Any quick thoughts on that?
Well, I just know about the Facebook and Twitter. I mean, you guys are on it all the time. I mean, not while they're driving, but they're on it, when you're at home, when you're looking up information about trucking. You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter. The younger generations bring this stuff about.
Yeah, social media, as far as getting, the information out, that's, I can't really speak that well on that because I guess I'm old. I'm 60 years old. It's kind of passed me by. I'm learning at it. But in saying that, Neil, one of the drivers, well, not one, several yesterday mentioned that one of the things that they really are upset about is distracted driving. So when you do talk about smartphones, let's talk about that for a second, because that has caused a lot of issues. And that's, when nobody wants to have an accident, but a lot of accidents are caused by distracted drivers, whether it's a truck driver. I'll call somebody up if I see them on the phone, don't have the headgear on. That's a pretty good penalty. You don't hear too much about it, but it's the law. Seatbelts, the law. There's a reason for that, but there's a lot of distracted driving. So as far as the apps and whatnot, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Matter of fact, I'd like to go back to my old phone that's a BlackBerry, but that's it. I got to no going back.
Technology keeps going forward. Skip Yackel, the principal engineer at Volvo, inquired about more productive vehicles, which could help solve the driver shortage and fuel and other factors. So I wanted to widen that out a little bit more than just productive vehicles, but are there technologies maybe like automated manual transmissions that maybe seem to be gaining more and more momentum, and if that needs to be a part, productive vehicles and this equipment advancements need to be a serious part of the conversation.
Automatics make a big difference.
You're smiling, that's clear.
Yeah, personally, automatics make a big difference. I've been driving manual for the longest, and I've got my opportunity to get into an automatic several times, and it makes a huge difference on the driver, and then comfort. Comfort in the cab. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, technology is great, and as the economy improves and carriers get healthier, I can't help but think that more of that's going to happen. There's a price to it right now, and just like large screen TVs, the price comes down. A lot of that technology will come down. But David Pohl of Pohl Transportation back there in Ohio, he's right on the leading edge of all of that. Any technology, he wants to try it and use it because he believes in it for recruiting, and also drives his costs down. So, every company is a little bit different on that, but it's good stuff.
There are technologies that either, Kevin, you use or that you guys, maybe without plugging anyone in particular, but how you go about monitoring that a new hire is doing the things that he or she should do, maybe before that, to predict. What methods in terms of trying to predict who would be a good hire for your fleets, or you may say that this person is going to make it.
There's so many technologies out there, and we're a medium-sized company. But let me just say this: we ventured into a company, Vinomics, and it was a package deal because we all know that the hours of service, as far as the tracking of electronic logging devices, it's going to come. We just don't know when. And there's going to be great improvements between now and when it becomes a law or the rule becomes where everybody's got to abide by it. So in saying that, I wanted to get something, the best bang for my buck, and I think we all learned that. Vinomics, in this particular case, has shifting patterns. And Alfonso, I know there's good drivers, but maybe not good, they don't shift well. That's wear and tear on the equipment, there's other issues on it. So we get immediate feedback, on a lot of that. So those are things, we're trying to get different things that are happening in real time, so that we can bring the driver in. We can bring a mediocre driver and make them an excellent driver. So by their shifting patterns.
And I think you go beyond technology. You go to the driver trainer, the person who's training this guy when he comes into the company. He can tell you a lot more about that driver who you're trying to hire than that any piece of equipment, I believe. I just think he can tell you more because his attitude, how he's approaching what he's doing. Is he happy with what he's doing? Is he proud of it? Is this going to be a long-term driver or not?
I think the last question we have time for, from Lorraine Browning of Swift, is asking about what sort of research is being done or should be done to identify common characteristics among the most successful drivers, such as million-mile safe drivers, which many fleets put on or on their own. If you have any thoughts about what you see in terms of some of the grand champions or some of the the safest drivers that are honored out there, or you can speak from your own experiences that maybe a fleet of all sides may want to look for, or in addition, maybe just more ways to honor some of the best characteristics. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Wow. How do you honor the driver?
Well, there are characteristics you see among this upper echelon of drivers that some of the road team captains
They are,
from all
I
over.
can just tell you from personal knowledge, they're proud. They're proud of what they're doing. They're always driving to improve as drivers. You want to be the best. You really want to be the best of the best. You're going to keep trying. And that's what I've been doing over my career. I've always wanted to be better and better. I enjoy training. I enjoy getting training. The more training I get, the better I feel. And I think the better driver I can be. And so those are the kind of drivers I believe you're going to find who's going to be the best overall on the long term. The ones who really, when you offer training, they take it in. Or they go out themselves trying to get more and more training from you, or from the company.
Yeah, how cool is that? We've got America's road team champion, grand champion. He says, I want to be trained. I want more. I mean, that's what it's all about. Media is a great way to do it. And to answer the person from Swift, take all your drivers and add up all the years of safe driving and get a hold of the media and say, by the way, our company drives X amount of millions of miles. Put those numbers in there. The media wants that information. And then get that out there. So that gets those drivers more involved in it.
Yeah, the drivers like to see those numbers.
They do. And they like to see their name. They like to hear their name.
Exactly.
There's a reason why Cheers was good on TV, because they know your
always
name.
know your name.
Well, I think on that note, we're going to begin to wrap up. I want to thank both Alfonso
Thank you.
and Kevin for taking the time out of their busy schedules to take part in today's event. I also want to congratulate you on Ohio State's victory last night. I know you had a little wager for a donation for the image campaign.
Past chairman, my card, send me that $100. Appreciate that.
Well, you heard it here first, everyone.
If you don't mind me adding, roll tide.
Okay, next year. I also want to thank Rip for sitting in with us and our entire production team for making this happen. We even have our photographer, John Summers, here to document today's special events. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors, Lytix and EBE Technologies. A replay of this event will be uploaded to our website, ttnews.com, and to YouTube in the coming hours. We have created a survey so our viewers can provide us feedback and help improve our Live on Web programming. We encourage you to visit liveonweb.ttnews.com/survey. You can also find a schedule of upcoming events at our Live on Web homepage. Finally, as some of you may know, TT Senior Features reporter Dan Berth is at home watching today as he recovers from a December 30th accident. We hope you are feeling better, Dan, and look forward for you to return to the office soon. Once again, I am Neil Apt. Thank you for watching.